Legal cases, legal issues, legal matters. You're watching WFTV's Law Talk with anchor Christopher Heath and expert legal analyst, attorney Mark NeJame.
Hi there, I'm Christopher Heath. You're watching WFTV's Law Talk, and of course joining me is Mark NeJame of the NeJame Law Firm. Today I want to kind of break down what is something that we hear people say, court. And court can mean so many different things: criminal, civil, federal, state, family court, juvenile court. There's a lot of different kinds of courts out there, and so you need to be aware of exactly what you're up against.
I'm really glad you're bringing this up today, Chris, because there is a lot of confusion. And a lot of times those of us who are lawyers kind of take it for granted because it's our language. We just talk about it, and when reporters are reporting it, we all kind of take it for granted that a lot of the public knows what we're talking about. And there really is an education process. And the fact is, you hit it on the head, there are different courts. People oftentimes get frustrated because they'll call a lawyer and the lawyer says they can't help them because it might not be their specialty, or it might not simply be financially justifiable for the person to proceed in court. You have federal and you have state. And federal cases are federal crimes. State cases are state crimes. Well, that sounds pretty normal, but what constitutes a federal case? Well, in federal court, for a civil case, it has to be $75,000 or more. There has to be a diversity of jurisdictions, which means it has to be taking place in more than one jurisdiction. So you have things that might not be applicable to go to state court. And a lot of times you have state cases, people think they're state cases, but they have to go to federal court. And that gets into a whole area of things such as, is the lawyer qualified to be in federal court? And you and I were talking off the air before we got on. Well, you don't want to call a lawyer to handle your criminal case if they specialize in wills and estates and trusts. And so there's a bunch of areas on there. And if I could say, it's also not, and we've also had people frustrated when they've called, but we're really doing it because it's in their best interest. They go, somebody owes me $300 and it's from 5 years ago. And we're saying, we're sorry, we can't help you because it's going to cost more to file that case and just pay money for your lawyer than it will be to go ahead and hire a lawyer to take that case. So we say, go to small claims court, which there's a lower ceiling for them to proceed. And so it is important to know where you're going, who you're going there with, and why you're going, and does it make sense?
But and I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head here, and that is this idea that when you go to get an attorney, or you're dealing with a different court, it's kind of like if you were to go to a doctor. You wouldn't go to an optometrist if you've got a toothache. Right. You're going to an optometrist because you need to have your vision checked. You're going to the dentist because your tooth hurts. They're both doctors. They both have a medical background, but one has a specialty that the other does not. One has a practice that deals with one thing that the other does not. So if you have a civil case, going to somebody with a criminal background doesn't make sense. If you are in a federal case, somebody that mainly just does state court. Again, and that gets to where it's both incumbent on the person who is looking for an attorney to know where they're going, but to also know what they're up against.
You hit it on the head again. Like in our firm, we have different divisions, and those lawyers specialize in those divisions. We don't have our criminal lawyers who are in the criminal division handling personal injury cases. We don't have our personal injury lawyers handling criminal cases. And the civil division has certain subcategories, and we handle some, and others we simply say we don't handle them, or we might refer them elsewhere. And there's also a lot of confusion with the public, Chris, when it comes to some criminal cases, because they read on the news that somebody got acquitted or they got convicted in federal court, or in state court, excuse me, and then the feds took it on. Well, interestingly, there's no double jeopardy on a state criminal case and a federal criminal case. So you could be acquitted in state court, and as long as it meets federal guidelines, you can be prosecuted again without the benefit of double jeopardy in federal court. Or they might go after you civilly in federal court or criminally for civil rights violations for certain types of cases that are high profile, and you see them in the news, and then somebody was acquitted or convicted federally, in state court, but then federally, all of a sudden the feds pick it up and go after them for civil rights violations and such. And it's permissible. So that's why there is a lot of confusion, understandably so, and that's why we're here to help them through Law Talk.
Well, that too, I mean, you mentioned one of the things there with, once you've gone through criminal, you still could have exposure civilly. And we've seen this in many high-profile cases where a person is brought up on criminal charges, they're found not guilty, and then the family of the victim will come in and sue them in civil court. And correct me if I'm wrong, usually it's a lower threshold in civil than it is in criminal, correct?
Well, it's criminal is the highest threshold, and that is it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt, whereas civil is the preponderance of the evidence. So you have a completely different standard, and you're exactly right. And it's also another reason that if you are finding yourself in criminal court, that you really should get the best lawyer that you can afford. Why? Because that lawyer will now be able to advise you, which your potential exposure may be civilly, and if you enter a no contest plea in criminal court, well then that can't be used against you in civil court necessarily. But they can bring in the facts, but not necessarily the conviction itself. Whereas if you get convicted, then arguably that can be brought in your civil case, and it lessens your odds of winning substantially. So yes, it's a complicated maze to get through the system. Remember, most of the laws were made by lawyers, but the fact is that it is so incumbent to talk to your lawyer, question them inside out, and ask, because it's your life, it's your finances, it's your family. And so many people just take the word of their lawyer without asking the questions or having it explained to them. Like any relationship, communication is essential. If you communicate, you're going to get through most of your troubles in life.
So much to unpack there. Great expertise, Mark. Thank you so much. If you'd like to see more of this or any of our other law talks, visit our website, wftv.com/legal, or join us each week right here on Facebook. I'm Christopher Heath, and thanks for watching.
WFTV's Law Talk was brought courtesy of the Personal Injury and Accident Division of NeJame Law.